you can take back to the office this afternoon and apply to your advantage. Everybody got one of these?
Yeah.
Very good. What I'd like to do quickly is I'll introduce the panel members by name and by company, but we're going to give them an opportunity then to talk a little bit about themselves and about their own companies. Immediately to my right here is Harry Glantz, who is the Vice President of Human Resources of RailWorks, which is an operating company of WindPoint Partners. Next to him is Doron Grossman, who is a partner at Court Square, an operating partner. Then Mitch Gross, who is the CEO of Mondi Travel, which is an operating company of GTCR. Next, Rick Winiger, an operating partner at Blue Wolf Capital, and then you've had the chance to hear from Pete. So, Harry, why don't you give us a little more color on RailWorks and yourself?
Pete, thank you, and good morning to everybody, and thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this morning. My name is Harry Glantz. I have been with RailWorks Corporation for about 5.5 years. I joined them in September of 2008. I'm Vice President of Human Resources. RailWorks does two things. We are in the construction and maintenance business for the railroads. We do nothing with the cars. We do everything with the track, everything related to that. We do both heavy track work, meaning freight, and we also do transit. We are involved in numerous cities as far as mass transit goes. We have had just tremendous growth over the last several years. As I mentioned to some people, I try to credit that to my time with the organization. My boss is almost buying that at this point. We have grown literally from under a $500 million company when I started in 2008 to when all of the numbers are finalized for 2013, which should be this week, we will be over $700 million, and we have remained a profitable organization. So it has been a significant experience from a human resources standpoint, because every time you keep growing, there are more things to indeed change and to add, not the least of which is the talent of the organization. I'll speak more a little bit later. We have just begun some acquisitions, and that will now add to all of our, what I will term our challenges and our fun.
Thank you. Good. Doron?
Well, firstly, thanks to the Association of Corporate Growth for putting on this event, and thanks, Tate, for inviting me to participate in this panel. I am an operating partner at Court Square Capital. We're a middle-market private equity firm here in the city, investing out of our third fund, which is about $3.2 billion. We invest in 4 spaces: tech and telecom, business services, industrial, and healthcare. I've been a serial CEO prior to this, mainly of industrial businesses for 20 years. Grew up in General Electric, ran the global train air conditioning business for American Standard, and then did 2 publicly traded company turnarounds. So as it relates to cultural transformation and delivering results out of that, I've probably spent at least 15 of my 25 years of experience doing that. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and engaging with the panelists and you all.
Hi, I'm Mitch Gross. Again, thanks, Tate, for the invitation. Thanks to ACG for providing the opportunity, and thanks to everybody for braving the cold and showing up today. Hope you all gain a lot from the experience. I'm CEO of Mondi. Mondi is a GTCR company. With all respect to Doron and our private equity colleagues here, they're really top-notch, and we're really fortunate to be associated with GTCR. I think that, frankly, who we partner with and who sponsors the organization has a much greater impact on the success of an organization than people generally give it credit. So we're very fortunate in that regard. I cut my teeth at American Express, GE as well, with Doron, and moved up from there to Sendent, where I ran the Americas for a large travel technology organization, on from there to run the insurance business globally for TravelX and Apax company. So all of these were very high-growth organizations within larger entities, with the exception of 1 or 2 turnarounds sprinkled in there for good measure. So what's Mondi? Mondi is what's known as an air consolidator, which probably means nothing to most of you. We essentially broker discounted special rates on international airfare and resell them through about 15,000 travel agency relationships in the United States and Canada. What's that mean? Well, in the travel space, it's really tough to make a buck, especially with the airlines. We provide efficient distribution for the airlines to fill seats in planes. So once the plane takes off, they can't get that revenue back. And so the space was created in an era where the loads or the number of seats that were occupied was relatively low, and we created an opportunity to fill those high-value international seats, especially with reach to ethnic markets. For example, one of our companies has a contact center in India that speaks 30 different Indian languages and 70 different dialects. British Airways, for example, has 5 salespeople in all of North America. They're not going to get that kind of reach. It's interesting because these days seats are pretty full, and the airlines kind of reevaluate that fundamental relationship. In any case, we brought together 4 very successful legacy companies in this space, collectively representing about 30% of share in this niche market. It's pretty large. We do north of $1.5 billion in turnover. These have all been in business for over 30 years. They're founder-led, very traditional, very paper-based types of businesses dealing with these micro agencies, and from there have expanded out into online players to some extent, very few of those, and more traditional mainstream agencies as well. On top of that aggregation play, as if that wasn't difficult enough, we are introducing a technology venture that is fully automating this old school way of doing business. And so we are a technology venture wrapped inside an aggregation. The consolidators provide the cash flow that funds the venture place, the venture play, and the venture provides the transformation that will improve yield and grow market share. A lot of fun.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rick Winiger. I work with Blue Wolf Capital Partners. Thank you for your attention this morning, and thank you, Tate, for the invitation. Blue Wolf is a private equity firm here in the city. We just closed on our 3rd fund this past summer. We have $425 million under management. We take controlling investments in middle market companies with special complexities. So, for example, complexities of government, regulatory compliance, labor, and often complexities of ownership, founding families that are having a hard time letting go and transitioning, or carve-outs. I began my career in manufacturing, working for Fortune 500 companies, running operations in the U.S. and Latin America. I've spent 10 years of my career in Latin America. I transitioned from that into consulting and spent the next decade consulting to large and small manufacturing operations around the globe. And in the last 3 years, transitioned into private equity, first on the outside and then on the inside, and recently joined Blue Wolf as a lead operating partner.
Well, very good. And Pete, we've all heard from you. So let me go to the first question, and that is one thing that most of us face in integrating cultures as a result of add-on acquisitions. And Harry, I know you have some experience in that area, so you have a war story there for us?
I do. Thank you. This was really a great exercise to go over. It gave me an opportunity to really start to think about what worked over the last couple of years, and in several of the different companies I've been in, I have been involved in acquisitions. So it was an opportunity to take a look at what worked a few years ago and what really worked over the last couple of years. Well, I'll deal with one that we've had at RailWorks. This was an acquisition that we started 2 years ago, and it is one I'll say up front, it has been very, very successful for us. It's been really the only acquisition that RailWorks has done over the last several years. This is a company we acquired. It was about a $10 million company, and it's in the welding business. They specifically do thermite welding. It was a perfect fit for us because they did it for the railroads. It had been in business for about 10 years. The president of the company had been involved with the railroads for over 40 years, so he certainly understood the markets. He certainly understood our customers. It was done as what we would term, or we did in the company, a strategic acquisition. There were going to be synergies between our company and this new company. Dealt with the same customers. We could indeed expand all that, but also it was with the idea that we could then go into other lines of business by using them, called maintenance of way. While they did welding, we could also go into things such as brush cutting around the track and some other things such as that. But that was the initial idea of it. As we went into this acquisition, it was really important that we understood the population. This was a great group of people. They had about 100 of these welders all over the country, and that was part of our challenge to indeed get in touch with everybody to let them know they were now going to be part of a new company. At any one time, we had employees from this organization in at least 30 states. And from a communication standpoint, that became exceedingly difficult because we didn't have more than 4 or 5 people in one place. It wasn't the idea that we were going to use to have a teleconference, and we weren't going to be able to do Skype, because I can tell you when you have a group of people in a cornfield in Iowa, there's no reception anywhere with it. So it was a challenge to get them so that they could indeed hear what we wanted to indeed provide them. Before I go to that a little bit more, it was also a challenge in setting up a program, an onboarding program for this group of people, because as I mentioned, these were skilled labor. But I had to provide a program to our management with it as to why it would work. Well, this is one of the things that I did look at over the last several days in presenting to you today. One of the major things that really worked, as I provided to our management, it was the words that I used. I never used the word culture. I was talking with somebody this morning about that. What I did use was, how are we going to maintain the behavior of these people? And probably the most important word that I used, and I didn't realize it back then, but I do now, is value. I used the term, what are we going to use from a value standpoint that this acquisition is going to indeed work for us? Then I used another term with it, and that was indeed called, what's valued to us? What are the valued behaviors that we want these people to not necessarily change, but use? And if we are going to be using values, meaning what the company stands for, let's make sure that everybody understands those at the very beginning. So, value one that was presented, it was to get everyone to understand and commit to the values of our company, meaning Railworks. And people may think that that's a cliche, but as I look at it, it was one of the most important things that we did at the very beginning. We have 4 values. Just as an abbreviation on them, we have a value for customers. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. Our second value has to do with employees, because that's what we do. We're in a business that has people to it. If we don't value employees, something is wrong with us. So we put that right out there. We also made it a point that everybody understood who was going to be acquired that we want to be an industry leader. And last but by no means least, we will always conduct ourselves with integrity. And we use the definition of integrity. That's how you behave when no one else is watching you. And we kept that consistent all through the acquisition and all of our communications. It was important for us to really have everyone understand that the railroad business, the construction business, with all that, it's highly regulated. We've got more federal agencies that we have to go through no matter what we do. It just keeps going on and on and on. If we do anything wrong, if there's any type of deviation, there's lots of reports, but there's publicity on it. And as soon as that occurs, we're not going to get a lot of repeat business. So our reputation, there was value to that, and I presented that to management, and they absolutely understood that. We also had to indeed understand about security. All of our people had to be able to get onto things such as refineries. When the track goes in the refinery, like a Chevron, Chevron is our customer. We had to be able to continue to have our people get those security clearances. And last but by no means least, and it actually is our primary priority, is safety. It was always part of the acquisition. It is absolutely number one with our company. It is part of our values, and we made it known that there will be no compromise in safety. Everyone has to be attuned to that, and everybody will indeed follow our policies. What we then had to address was really immediately, and how I presented it to the organization, this group of people, this great population, these welders that we were indeed acquiring, they didn't care about culture. If I would have used the term culture, they probably thought they were going to a museum field trip with it. It was nothing like that whatsoever. But what they were interested in is what I term the me issues. Tell them what they get out of this acquisition, and tell them two things as what was presented this morning. Here's what changes and here's what doesn't change. We set up a whole series of communications for the organization. Very specifically, we set up 3 and 5 times a day telephone conference calls for all of the time zones, and we did them actually very, very late at night so that if somebody's family wanted to participate, they could. We literally told them and focused on, here's what occurs, here's what happens to you. We made it a point, I made it a point to give an offer letter once more to every employee in the organization, and it wasn't a big deal, but it specifically had their name, and it specifically had their title, and it specifically had what their hourly wage was going to be, and everybody liked that. They now felt that they were part of our organization, and more importantly, they felt they had a job, and more importantly than that, it showed them that we knew who they were. That, as I found as I look back on it, was a very, very big point for those people, because they didn't have that type of communications before. We were bringing something to them. We told them about the benefits. Here's what changed. In this case, we had an advantage because we were giving them more benefits, and we certainly emphasized that, and they understood it. How do I know that those communication programs were successful? Well, we started out with not a lot of people on them. We continued them for a week, and then we extended them for another week. By the end of all that, we had people coming back 4 and 5 times to be on those calls. We made sure that the conference call numbers went out, and then we had spouses, girlfriends, whatever, they were joining it and asking questions on it. So they really appreciated that, and we were able to get our message out. What also worked was we had a scripted message. Everything that I said over the telephone, we made sure that their managers had, and they had it in the same manner so there would always be a consistent message for them. And that actually seemed to work very well for us. Value number 2 with all of this had to do with what occurred after the first 9 months of this. And at that point, after the 9 months, there's where we started to get into changes with management. We had some pushback at the very beginning with it, but the individuals in management, as I said, the president had been in the business for 40 years. He understood it. He was getting ready to indeed retire with it. He wanted it to work. We got all of those straightened out. From an HR standpoint, we started to bring in new people. We could go through, here are the new talents that are needed. We had an onboarding process so that somebody wasn't thrown into the deep end at the very beginning and they drowned. We made sure that they had an onboarding process with it, and that actually began to work for us also. The value 3, what we're really bringing to all of this, had to do with the succession plan. How are these people going to indeed be motivated, be put into the next step for the organization? And that began to work also. We now have a succession plan in place, and it is indeed working for them. We have new business initiatives that are also working there, and we also found that the idea of no compromise from our initial values actually really did work. A couple more pieces with that which I found were really important. When we went out and spoke to people, and we really emphasized the fact about things such as safety, drug testing was a new experience for all of these people. They really didn't have it. We brought it. No compromise whatsoever with it. We had everybody take a drug test at the very, very beginning, but we found that some people were extending this out an awful long time. There were reasons for that. They knew that they couldn't pass it. One of the ways that we came around to indeed fix it was I showed up at one of the job sites where 2 of the individuals that had not taken the drug test for the first month, where I knew that they were, and I did clear it with the managers. I had somebody from our drug testing organization show up there so we could actually do it on site. We also had come across the understanding that, well, there's an industry out there today that allows people to, or shows you how to beat a drug test. We found out that several of these individuals were significant subscribers to that. We went out, we had the drug test done. One of the individuals actually passed it. One of them refused to indeed take it. He was immediately terminated. We found out that the individual that indeed passed it, it was because he was subscribing to that website that I mentioned to you. When I had a chance to speak to him, you probably heard the joke, but I actually used it with him, and he paid attention. Sir, I have good news and I have bad news for you. The good news is you passed the drug test. You had a negative response to it. That was the good news. The bad news to it, unfortunately, you're pregnant, and we're not going to be able to keep you in this organization anymore. We got the news across. The idea of having a consistent message with that really did indeed work. At the end of all of this, as I looked at it, why did it work? Here's what I saw. We had communications, an exceedingly intense communications program, and we kept a consistent message. We told people about what the me issues were up front, very, very significant. In addition with that, we told all of these individuals that we had a new benefit for them, an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, meaning on the drug side of this, if you have a problem and you want help, if you tell us now, we'll help you with it. If you get caught, then it's indeed too late. We did have people that came forward with it, and I do attribute that to credibility. How do I know that all of this indeed worked? Well, number one, our president and CEO is making money. He likes all of that. But a year after the acquisition and the relationship that I had formed with the president, he actually called us. And he wanted me and to bring my team to present to his organization a year after the acquisition at their safety meeting. Never ever occurred before, but he specifically asked for the team. I said, what do you want us to do? He said, do the same thing you did a year ago. It went over well with people. We actually got a lot out of it. Just do it again. So communications, support of management, and a consistent message, and the me issues, focusing on them at the beginning, I think were the key points to this.